Chapter 1. Nothing could have prepared me for what I was experiencing, because failing as a writer didn't happen all at once. It came in quiet steps, a missed deadline here, a half-written paragraph there, bad story ideas everywhere, until the silence between words was permanent. One morning I woke up and realized I'd stopped trusting my own voice. And I wasn't the only one who didn't believe in me. I stared at the subject line of an email that had turned my life upside down. Your option book. I clicked open for what had to be the 20th time and reread it again, though I could probably quote every single word. Hi, Alexandra. I'm so sorry, but the team has decided to pass on your proposed ideas. Though interesting, they're not consistent with the direction the line is moving in. We'd love to see something fresher, more relevant for today's market. Please submit a detailed outline and the first 100 pages for consideration. Warmly, Sally Grant, Senior Editor. Detailed outline. First 100 pages. If I hadn't already crashed out about this yesterday, I'd be losing it right now. I hadn't been asked for sample chapters since I was a new author, since before the accolades and bestseller lists, before Sally, the one who was taking the line in a different direction. I wanted to blame her. After all, she was my spokesperson on the team. If she didn't fight for my stories, there was no one to do it. But I couldn't realistically put this on Sally. Publishing was a business. Sally had bosses too. The first published novelist I ever met told me not to throw my life away writing. I'd attended his book signing with hopes of being inspired. I was a freshman in college. Discovering that an author was speaking at the local bookstore seemed like a gift. I had questions. When I asked what I should do to have a writing career like his, he'd replied, "You're a sweet kid. Find something else to do." He didn't stop there. He proceeded to say other uninspiring things like, "This is a tough row to hoe. It's not all it's cracked up to be. It's feast or famine. More famine than feast, darling." His cagey, bitter smoker's voice put his message to music. Any writer talking in that many cliches was not to be taken seriously, and I hated his book. But my 18-year-old self listened. I changed my major from creative writing to education and taught for 8 soul-sucking yet rewarding years. If those things could coexist. I wondered if I'd have to go back to it. Back to a life without characters and stories. Sure, I could do both. Most writers worked a full-time job, but I hadn't had to. I sold enough books to pay my bills. But now, as I sat in front of my laptop staring at a blank document, the author's warning picked at the edges of my brain, bringing startling clarity and humbling remorse. Like his words, my career had become a cliché. I couldn't make my muse work. I was out of words. No words, no story. No story, no contract. No contract, no publisher. No publisher, no career. Failure was in my present. Famine was in my future. My phone pinged with a text from my mother, Beck. Why she texted me when she was in the next room, who knew? I guess it was her way of respecting the writing time I so righteously protected. "We are leaving in 5 minutes." I sighed. The last thing I wanted to do was go out tonight, but Beck threatened to turn off the internet. We lived together, or rather she lived with me, since the house was legally in my name. However, Beck used my heavy dependence on technology to get me to obey. Obey because at 38 years old, I was still doing most of what she told me. I protested, though. I grumbled as I changed out of my sweatpants and then whined and moaned the entire ride, which was 40 minutes, ending in the partially full parking lot of the Low Country Literacy Center in Ravenel. I had heard about this place. My memory went back to a social media announcement about the ribbon cutting. A few years ago? I wasn't sure. I couldn't imagine what this outing was about. Please tell me she hasn't signed me up for some speaking thing. I didn't have the capacity to inspire anyone. Not today. A myriad of thoughts skittered through my mind with all the possibilities of what could be going on inside, especially on a Wednesday evening. Why are we here? Because something cool is happening, Beck shrieked, turning off the engine. She reached into her bag and removed 2 red and white church mints, handing one to me before putting the other in her mouth. Beck cocked her head in my direction. You'll wish you had fresh breath if you meet someone. I stuck the mint in my pocket. I'm not going to meet someone. I'm not even interested in meeting anyone. Yeah. Beck waved me off. She pulled the sun visor down and frowned in the mirror. I know what she saw because she ticked off the list all the time. Hooded eyelids, laugh lines, and a crepey neck, none of which were pronounced nor made her any less beautiful. At 54, my mother was aging backward. Pretty soon she was going to look younger than me. More cars filled the parking lot, which made me more curious. Would you please tell me what's happening here? I told you, it's a surprise. Whatever it is, it's a horrible one. Alexandra, Beck replied, stretching the syllables of my name like she always did when she was frustrated with or placating me. Fix your attitude. She powdered her nose and dropped the compact back into her bag. Come on. And with that, she was out of the car, slamming the door behind her. I sighed, which didn't fix my attitude, reached for my bag and followed her. By the time I finished the little spin through the revolving door, my aggravation had become anxiety. I should have been the last person to be uncomfortable in a literacy center. After all, I wrote books for a living. And not just that. During my teaching years, I was a middle grades reading specialist. I loved that job. Until I didn't anymore. Until the lure of writing full-time collided with the exhaustion from teaching and trying to meet state testing expectations. I needed a break from education. I took one and never went back. As I stood in this place, a little guilt circled my heart. I had completely walked away from that aspect of my life. I didn't even teach Sunday school. I walked into the main room where everything was happening. It was full of books and pictures of students, and one wall was decorated with trophies and framed certificates. Although only seconds ahead of me, Beck was already chatting with someone. I busied myself reading the history of the center under a series of pictures on the wall, which included the groundbreaking for construction and the ribbon cutting, as well as framed newspaper articles, the first being the center's receipt of a $500,000 grant, and the second, congratulations for the center's instrumental role in improving high school writing test scores. Next, I moved on to the trophies, which were for the Reading Bowl, the county, state, and regional contests. The center had accomplished quite a bit in 3 years. I scanned the rest of the large conference room, spotting a stack of handsome-looking hardcover books on a table at the far end. I only wore glasses when driving or going to the theater, but my nearsightedness had gotten progressively worse since my last eye exam. I could not make out the title or author's name. Is this an author-book discussion? I groaned. This was the last thing I wanted to do. There were Hallmark movies to watch and ice cream to be eaten. Besides, these days author talks only added to my feelings of failure, especially authors in hardcover. Not too far from the book table, a man sat on a stool. Head down, he was tapping on his phone. Something about his mess of glossy black curls and the shape of his head looked familiar, I thought. Or maybe it was his wide shoulders. Were shoulders that distinct? I didn't know, but my eyes were locked on him, waiting until he raised his head. It wasn't seconds before he did, and then I discovered why he looked familiar. I knew him. Kind of. His name was Gabe, and he'd been the manager of a bookstore in Beaufort. Back when I traveled for tour events, I'd had book signings at his store. He'd been passionate about books. It was cool that he was still around them. He stretched, and his silky knit sweater resettled itself nicely around his chest. He did have distinct shoulders. Memorably broad and square were they attached to his biceps. We'd chat about working out. He was apparently still in the gym. I was not. Now I really didn't want to be here. I'd gotten as fluffy as my novels. Like always, Beck found the food. She walked toward me carrying a dessert-sized plate stacked high with little snacks. "You have got to try some of this stuff." I shook my head. "I'm not hungry." "Oh, please. It's free," she said, removing a toothpick and pushing it into my face. "This is some kind of grilled meat with artichokes. The garlic sauce on this is to die for." Garlic? Absolutely not. If I couldn't get out of here, I'd have to talk to Gabe. I reached into my pocket for the peppermint, opened it and popped it into my mouth. I said no. "You're being a poophead, Alex." "I told you this was a bad idea. I don't want to be here for some random author's thing." "You used to love book talks." There was no point arguing with Beck. We were already here, and she was right. I loved listening to authors share the inspiration for their stories. Or at least I did love it, before I entered this losing season. A projector screen came down behind Gabe. He hopped off the stool and moved it to a corner of the room as a graphic appeared on screen. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was Gabe's headshot, very professionally captured, and a book, like the ones stacked on the table, which I could now read the title of on the screen. Seasons. He wasn't just Gabe the bookseller. He was the Gabriel Scott, the Pulitzer finalist. Scott, the winner of the National Book Critics Award for his debut memoir. I gasped, and the mint slipped down my throat, getting stuck in the wrong pipe. I coughed, fighting to dislodge it. I kept coughing, realizing I was in real trouble now. Heimlich. Does anyone still know how to do it? Gabe's Pulitzer finalist face showed concern. My mother popped up, shrieking my name. Our eyes met at the instant my soul left my body. I witnessed my own terror, watched my flailing arms, and then, whack! The mint flew out of my mouth like a tiny missile followed by wind, cells, DNA, and everything else inside me. I'd been slapped on the back, hard. I collapsed into a chair. Beck's appreciative, "Thank you, Jesus," met my ears right before a cup of water appeared in my blurred vision. I accepted it and looked to my left as I raised the cup to my lips. It was Gabe. Or was I supposed to think of him as Gabriel now? I blinked a few times, clearing the blurry haze, and focused on his face. I became acutely aware of why he made me so uncomfortable. Why an uneasiness settled just below the surface that made my heart speed up a little and my mouth dry a lot. He was handsome. Fine, actually. In a he's too young for me but I've still got eyes kind of way. I took a sip of water and lowered the cup. He said, "Alex Wesley. Wow, it's been a long time." Long enough for you to write the book of the century, I thought, raising the cup to my lips again. I continued to sip so I didn't have to say anything. We almost lost you. His eyes crinkled at the corners with his smile, and I reckoned, wrinkles? Not so young. My mother was talking, whispering, "Thank you," to someone other than God. Gabe stood. You're okay, but no more small pieces of food for you tonight. He smiled again, and this time it was deep enough to reveal his dimples. Dimples. Who even still had those, other than men in romance novels? He walked away, or maybe it was a stroll. Which verb would I use if I were writing? Strut? Stride? Something that conveyed mad swagger. I was still searching for my word when I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned and faced the man who I instinctively knew had been my savior/assailant. I didn't know if I wanted to thank him or hit him back. He'd probably bruised every bone from my vertebrae to my sternum. He dropped into the chair next to me. Sorry I hit you like that, but believe me, the Heimlich hurts worse. I was hoping I could get it out with one hard one. I nodded and said, Thank you for saving her life, Beck interjected, slipping into the chair behind us. Shifting my insides was on the tip of my tongue. I grinned a little and said, Yes. Thank you for saving my life. I secretly wanted to press assault charges. My lungs were loose. And where was that mint? He needed it. That garlicky meat on the toothpick was a catering fail. Beck interjected again, saying, My daughter is a writer, too. She's written almost 30 romance novels. A bristle of irritation ran through me. She knew I hated it when she did that. Through gritted teeth, I said, Mom, don't. Someone tapped a microphone, and then I was grateful Gabe was being introduced, so all eyes were back at the front of the room. He had a long bio. He looked embarrassed as the introduction went on and on. I knew that feeling. Listening to someone read your credentials was like being eulogized. When asked for my bio, I tried to send over the shortest one I had, but sometimes people rooted around for more info. Had Gabe given someone this long soliloquy? Or was he hoping this would end soon? I couldn't read him. He took the microphone after prompting from the moderator and started talking about his inspiration for the book, his writing process, themes, and contemporary relevance. One deep, impactful story at a time. Then the moderator fielded questions. I know it must have been my imagination, but Gabe seemed to keep finding my eyes in the crowd. When he was finished, applause rang out. The moderator announced that books were for sale and Gabe would be signing. Beck popped to her feet. I'm getting one. Mom, I whined, protesting because I wanted to get out of here. But she was already gone. I'd trained her well. She always supported an author with a purchase. Even when she was poor and the book had sprayed edges. Even when she would not read it. Beck didn't read serious literature. She was afraid of feeling strong emotions. Sometimes I thought she'd spent her whole life running from her own heart. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She didn't let herself love out loud. Her strength looked like calm to most people, but I knew better. It wasn't calm. It was control. And I surmised it was the reason she didn't like talking about the past. There was a lot of grief there, including the death of my father months before they were supposed to get married, and a complicated relationship with her parents, both now deceased. I remained seated, feeling some kind of way for not joining everyone in line, but also feeling a way about who Gabe had become as a writer. I wasn't a jealous person, but I couldn't deny feeling envious about all he'd accomplished with his debut book when I was 9 years into my career and quickly falling out of love with it. An email requiring 100 pages wasn't helping my relationship with the business. The moderator was back, announcing that Gabe would be drawing a winner for a giveaway. Beck was back at my side. "You should have come for the picture." She held out her phone, showing me their friendly smiles. "By the way, I entered you in the giveaway when I registered." Luck had zero interest in finding me. I sighed again. "Alex, do you know how many times you've sighed and groaned tonight? Just sit." I refused to. "I have to pee." I left her, moving through the crowd in the direction of the restrooms. I heard the moderator saying something about luxury, a cabin, a week. Just as I reached the corridor, a different voice boomed from the speakers, a male one. Gabe's. "The winner is Alex Wesley." Whatever it was, I didn't want it. I pushed the door and disappeared into the restroom. From the parking lot, the Literacy Center appeared to be a standalone building. It was not. It was one of several buildings on a 40-acre stretch of land that included income-generating rentals. I'd won a week's stay in one of their cabins. A week in a luxury cabin? Maybe I was wrong about luck, but all I saw around that place was trees. I preferred my luxury on the beach, where there were no ticks. "Alex, you're stressed. You could use a little getaway." We were back in the car. Paper cups full of meat on toothpicks occupied the cup holders between us. "It's probably lovely." "Then you stay in it." "Why would I stay in it? You're the one who needs to shake things up." She reached for a toothpick. "Changing your location might help your writing muse. Maybe you'll be inspired to write something different. What about that family saga you started a few years ago? The one with the 5 sisters who get called home for their mother's funeral." "You remember that?" "I don't even remember. It was a germ, a thought, not a story." "It had potential," Beck replied. "I get paid to write romance. I can't just change." I let my words trail off. She thought it was easy to switch genres. Everyone did. It wasn't, but she was caught up in Gabriel Scott's climb to literary stardom. "It doesn't have to be easy." "I have to be realistic. We have bills. The taxes and homeowners insurance are due soon, and you don't exactly make anything with your art projects and classes." Beck's lips pressed together tightly before she spoke. "I'm aware of what I make or don't make. I also know what's coming due. But we have some savings." "We can't blow through our savings. It's all we have." Beck released a tired sigh. Her gaze bounced between me and the road. "I'm not saying we should blow through anything. I'm just saying, breathe, sweetheart. Spend a little time exploring a passion project." "I can't. I need a new contract." She flicked her wrist as if to say, "Go on with that. You are a broken record about that contract." "Shrug it off if you want. I can't play in these people's faces." Beck did not understand. If I didn't get a project approved soon, I wouldn't have a publisher. We rode the rest of the way in silence, with only the sound of light traffic and a gentle breeze outside the car's windows. Once we reached our street, Beck spoke again. "What did I teach you about time, honey?" I remembered the lesson well. I'd lived my life making lists and plans because of the words she'd drilled into me. It's always going to keep its promise. And that promise is that it's going to keep going. It won't wait for us. She pulled the car into the carport and cut the engine. You're old enough to know that change happens, good and bad. You never know when it's going to be too late to do something you want to do. A frown settled into my brows and my heart. Are you being a fatalist right now? No, but you see what happened to that woman down the street? Beck wagged a finger between us. Beck was not good with neighbors' actual names. She referred to them by what they did. Flower Lady had a yard that looked right out of House and Garden. Hat was the man who always wore a baseball cap. Thinking she'd be impressed, he told Beck he had 500 hats. She was not. My minimalist mother was turned off. There was Neighborhood Watch, a pest who needed to find some business of her own, and Pam was the woman down the street. Beck had previously called her Red Car for obvious reasons, but no longer did because it was disrespectful at this point. Her red car hadn't moved in months because she'd had a stroke. Pam was younger than me. Beck was a fatalist. I don't mean to bring that up. It's not exactly where I was going. Honestly, I'm hopeful that you'll get married and maybe have some... I cut my eyes at her, and Beck let the word children slide back down her throat. I should have cut her off at marriage. I didn't even have a boyfriend or a date or anyone looking at me like he wanted to ask me on a date. I had nothing. You won this thing for a reason. You know that. So set yourself up in that cabin and let God give you some fresh wind and fresh fire. We ended the conversation about the topic. Beck wanted to bring it up again. She struggled to keep her comments inside her mouth, and I was glad because I'd already decided I wasn't going to the cabin. That is until I received an email from my agent. I clicked on it and read the worst news I'd received since the day they announced Borders Books was closing all its stores. Alex, how are you doing? Call me. I'd like to talk about Sally's email, your other ideas. I need to get you set up as soon as possible. I've decided to retire. Dana. And right there, my mother's words came back to me. Change. Sudden and bad. Time had kept its promise.